This man was known as Chief No Flesh, or Kaneka Wonka, an Oglala Sioux warrior whose very name came from his lean, wiry physique. In photographs, he is often seen holding a Sioux gunstock war club fitted with blades, a weapon that symbolized both strength and tradition. No Flesh was not only a fighter, he traveled to Washington, D.C. many times as part of peace delegations, speaking for his people in an era of broken treaties and shifting promises. In 1877, his path took a dramatic turn. He joined the U.S. Army as a scout, fighting not against settlers, but against the Sioux's sworn enemies, the Nez Perce. His life embodied the difficult choices Native leaders faced, balancing war, peace, survival, and adaptation in a world changing faster than any generation before. Tell me in the comments if you have heard of him before. Would you fight, negotiate, or survive like Chief No Flesh?
This boy was kidnapped and forced into a world completely unlike his own. In 1870, at just 11 years old, Herman Lehman was taken by Apache warriors in Texas. Ripped from his German-American family, he would spend the next 9 years living as a Native American. First adopted by the Apaches, Herman was trained as a warrior, learning their language, customs, and survival skills. He took part in raids and battles, eventually becoming so assimilated he forgot his native tongue and identity. Later, he was captured by the Comanche and adopted again, this time by a chief who treated him like a son. When the U.S. Army found him at age 20, Herman no longer saw himself as white. Reuniting with his birth family was painful. He struggled to reconnect, caught between two worlds that both claimed him, yet neither truly felt like home. Would you have stayed with your new tribe, or gone back to the family you barely remembered? It's 1850. This girl was just 13 when her life was torn apart. Her family was traveling west when they were attacked by a Native American tribe. Most were killed. Olive Ann Oatman and her sister were spared, but only to be enslaved. She was dragged across the desert, starved and beaten. Her captors traded her like property, forcing her into servitude. Eventually she was sold to the Mojave people, who did something even more unexpected. They tattooed her chin with indigo ink, marking her as one of their own. She lived with them for 5 years, ate their food, spoke their language, wore their clothes, and when American authorities came to rescue her, she hesitated. The girl who had once been enslaved had become part of the tribe. When she finally returned to white society, people were obsessed. Her tattoo made her a living mystery. She gave public lectures, wrote a best-selling book, but she never spoke badly of the Mojave. To her dying day, no one really knew. Was she a prisoner, or had she become something more? He was a man who fought not for conquest, but for peace. Born in 1840 in the Wallowa Valley of Oregon, Chief Joseph of the Nez Perce tribe grew up believing his people could live freely on their ancestral land. But when gold was discovered, the U.S. government broke its promises and ordered his tribe to move onto a reservation. Rather than submit, Joseph led his people on an incredible 1,400-mile journey toward freedom, across mountains, rivers, and frozen plains, pursued by the U.S. Army. His leadership, strategy, and compassion turned him into a legend of resistance. But after months of hardship, with his people starving and dying, he finally surrendered, saying, "I will fight no more forever." Chief Joseph spent the rest of his life advocating for his people's rights, never seeing his homeland again, but his courage and words still echo through history. Would you fight or surrender with dignity? He was a warrior who refused to be photographed, a man whose spirit became legend. Born around 1840, Crazy Horse was a member of the Oglala Lakota and one of the fiercest defenders of his people's land and way of life. From a young age, he was known for his quiet strength and unmatched skill in battle. He fought to protect the Black Hills after the U.S. government broke its promises and invaded sacred Lakota land when gold was discovered there. In 1876, Crazy Horse led his warriors alongside Sitting Bull in the Battle of the Little Bighorn, the fight that destroyed Custer's 7th Cavalry. But victory was short-lived. Relentless pursuit by the U.S. Army forced his people to surrender. Refusing to give up his freedom, Crazy Horse was arrested in 1877 and fatally stabbed while resisting confinement. He never signed a treaty, never posed for a photograph, and never surrendered his spirit. To this day, Crazy Horse remains a symbol of courage, resistance, and the unbroken spirit of the Lakota Nation.
After years of war in the 1880s, the U.S. Army turned to the Apache themselves. Men who knew the deserts, the mountains, the hiding places. They were recruited as scouts, promised pay, food, and safety for their families. These scouts helped hunt Geronimo, guiding soldiers to camps, even to kin. But loyalty came at a price. When raids struck the borderlands, suspicion fell on them. 19 scouts were accused of treachery, on evidence thin as dust. In 1887, at Fort Grant, Arizona, they marched to the gallows, still wearing the army uniforms they had fought in. Others were shipped to prisons far from their homes, locked away beside the very people they had helped capture. For the Apache Scouts, service to the U.S. was no shield. Their gamble for survival ended in betrayal, and in death. Subscribe to uncover more untold stories of bravery and betrayal. What would you have done?
This man was said to have lived through 3 centuries. Known as Gabanagwe Wentz, or John Smith, he was a Native American of the Chippewa tribe, born near Lake Superior, possibly in 1785. According to those who knew him, he remembered events from before Minnesota was even a U.S. territory. He lived through the fur trade era, the Civil War, and even the early 1900s, witnessing a world transform before his eyes. John Smith became known locally as the Old Indian, a quiet man with a deeply lined face that seemed to hold centuries of wisdom. He was said to have been over 130 years old when he died in 1922, though official records listed him as younger. Despite his age, he continued to fish, canoe, and live simply on the shores of Cass Lake. To his people, he symbolized endurance, a living bridge between the ancient ways and the modern world. Whether or not he truly lived that long, his story reminds us of the strength and mystery woven into the fabric of Native history. This man didn't just ride into history, he grabbed it by the horns. Born in 1870 to formerly enslaved parents, Bill Pickett grew up in Texas and quickly stood out for his fearless talent with cattle. But what made him legendary? He invented a brutal, jaw-dropping rodeo sport called bulldogging, now known as steer wrestling. Pickett didn't just wrestle steers, he'd leap from his horse, bite the animal's lip, and twist it to the ground. It was a technique he claimed to learn from watching bulldogs handle livestock. Crowds went wild. He became the first black cowboy to gain fame performing in Wild West shows, riding alongside legends like Buffalo Bill and Will Rogers. But racism tried to hold him back. Promoters often listed him as Native American or Mexican to avoid backlash. Still, his name echoed across the West. He performed for royalty, inspired generations of black cowboys, and redefined what was possible in the arena. Bill Pickett didn't just ride in rodeos, he reinvented them. His end was tragic. See the pinned comment to find out what happened. He was born in 1870 near Taylor, Texas, the son of formerly enslaved parents, growing up in a time when freedom was still new, but opportunity was scarce. From a young age, Bill Pickett worked the fields and tended cattle, learning to ride, rope, and handle wild stock, long before he was a man. He had only a 5th-grade education, but what he lacked in schooling, he made up for in grit and instinct. Pickett and his brothers formed their own company, the Pickett Brothers Bronco Busters and Rough Riders, performing tricks and stunts at local fairs across Texas. His daring style soon made him a legend of the early rodeo scene, earning him a place with the 101 Ranch Wild West show, one of the biggest in the world. But even fame couldn't shield him from danger. In 1932, while working on a ranch in Oklahoma, Bill was kicked in the head by a wild horse. The injury proved fatal. He died days later at the age of 61. He was buried on the 101 ranch grounds where he had once thrilled thousands. Today, Bill Pickett is remembered not just as a cowboy but as a pioneer, a man who turned courage into legacy and rode his own path through history.
She was just 15 when she picked up a rifle and discovered a gift that would make her a legend. Standing barely 5 feet tall, Annie Oakley could split a playing card in half at 30 paces. Soon, she joined Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, dazzling crowds around the world with her sharpshooting skills. She could shoot coins tossed in the air, snuff flames from candles, and even hit targets while riding on horseback. But Annie was more than an entertainer. She shattered gender roles in an age when women were told to stay silent. She became a fierce advocate for women's rights, believing every woman should know how to defend herself. Over her lifetime, she trained more than 15,000 women in the use of firearms for self-defense. To the world, she was Little Sure Shot. To history, she was proof that courage and skill know no gender. If Annie's story inspired you, hit like and follow for more untold legends who changed history.
Which story surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments.